All right, ladies and gentlemen, the YouTube stream has started, so just be mindful of what you say here, please.
If I could have your attention, if anyone has not signed up yet on the sign-up sheet, if you would, please come on up here and sign your name before it's given over here to Mr. Hosey.
Call this meeting to order, please. I'd like to welcome everyone tonight. Got a full crowd, standing only crowd tonight. If you would, stand with me. Well, David Frank, Invocation, David Frank, pastor from the church, and Landis.
Let's pray together. Father, we bow in this room tonight to recognize your presence among us to begin with. To know that the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the leader of leaders, is in this room and present and accounted for is a fantastic, fantastic fact. Lord, we also recognize that you are needed in our lives and in the life of this town. You're needed in the life of this county, this state, of this nation, of this world. And we give you thanks that the promise is that those who call upon your name, you're there. And so we give you thanks that you're in this place tonight. Would you give wisdom to those who lead? Would you give wisdom to those who speak? Would you also, Lord, give your hand of protection and guidance on the citizens of this town, but also the employees? We recognize each and every time the emergency personnel, fire, police, the first responders. We ask your hand of protection on them. And you know, Lord, every time we pray, we come back into this place and we pray again for the same thing. Well, we recognize the fact, Lord, that you brought us through another month and you protected these folks on the streets and their calls again. And so we give you thanks for that. Would you continue to do that and on each and every town worker as they go about their business. But Father, our prayers also go beyond this town, and we ask you especially for prayers for those affected by the hurricane last week. We're glad, we give you thanks that we weren't affected. But Father, we know that not so far away, towns and people were destroyed and decimated, and pray for them. We lift them up. We pray that the care and the resources that they so desperately need get there. And we give you thanks for this nation that's reaching out to help in that effort. Lord, we also give you thanks for our military, for citizens of this town who are serving, family members as well who are serving, and harm's way and in places of peace. And so, Lord, would you protect them and guide them, guard them, and you bring them back safely home again as well. For all these things, we give you thanks, knowing, again, Lord, you're here in this place, and you're good all the time. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Frank. Father, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. First order of business is number 5 would be the adoption of the agenda.
Mayor, I move that we adopt the agenda as presented to us tonight.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, I also move that we adopt the minutes from the August 5th, 2019 regular meeting.
Second. Motion and a second. Any objection? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Roger or Ron, you want to take number 7?
I believe that's going to be Brandon's.
Good evening. Number 7 is to set a public hearing for a voluntary annexation, which will be on tax map number 15608-101.
This is for the preliminary bond.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This will be in reference to the stormwater agreement that is set in place for Dollar General. Our attorney, Rick Locklear, has been working diligently with our engineer, Wes Webb, and so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Locklear. That way he can explain the agreement to you guys.
Well, it's one of the things that we're required to do is to enter into an agreement with the owners of the property, and the purpose of the agreement would allow and ensure the construction, once you have approved, as you did, the high density option for the Dollar General to go in and construct, that they would take precautionary measures to make certain that if there were excessive runoff, that water would be collected and released in such a fashion that it wouldn't have any adverse consequences. Part of that, the regulations they call for the establishments of bonds. For example, there is one bond that's to ensure that once you've approved it as a high density option, that they will construct in accordance with state laws and regulations regarding stormwater basins, and that afterwards, once it's constructed, that money would be released, at least a portion of it, and there would be a second bond that would be put in place, and the purpose of that second bond would be to make certain that the structure itself performed as it was supposed to. Now, the agreement, the easement, it anticipates and calls for an inspection throughout the year. It also calls for an inspection when there's excessive rainfall. Essentially what the agreement will do, it will put anybody who might subsequently purchase this Dollar General store that, hey, there's an obligation that goes along with this. you not only own the building and all that comes with it, but also there's an obligation to the town of Landis that you will maintain this catch basin. And in the event, whoever the subsequent owner might be, if they fail to abide by that commitment or obligation, what the town would be allowed to do through this easement is go in and make the necessary improvements. Now, when I began, I started talking about 2 bonds. One was for the construction. Now, I think we've got some representatives here from Dollar General, and what I would say as far as the construction bond is concerned, there's been a lot of discussion going back and forth, and I would submit that their position, I think, is to the effect that, well, we've already done this. Is this purchase of bond, is it necessary at this point? The way our ordinance is structured, it allows them to come in after the improvement. That is to say, I call it a catch basin, is actually constructed and operational and has been approved. They can come back in and petition the town to have a release of that bond. Now, in going back and forth, I would submit that what they have asked for is, number one, there wasn't a bond put in place in the beginning. And this, of course, would be a performance. I would characterize it as a performance bond for the construction of the basin. They're saying it's already been built, constructed. Is it necessary? Through the back and forth of discussions, I think what their proposal is, is that the money that we would have otherwise been able to request that we receive back, that the bond just be for that dollar amount. Is that what I'm hearing, fellas?
Yeah, well, we're offering a temporary, by the way, I'm very strict on More Development, and what we're proposing is to put in place a temporary, a 90-day bond to take care of the performance aspect of what Rick's talking about. And we've got a document here tonight that certifies the amount of the total BMP construction cost. So we could put that in place as a temporary measure, you know, until I think this thing is certified. And I think we're only talking about a few items that we have issues with currently that we don't have certified.
Well, you know, again, he's talking about a 90-day bond. And I think the question, the concern that I would have is that you have an ordinance in place, stormwater ordinance in place. And I would consider that to be something of an exception, because when the ordinance itself talks about posting of financial securities, it says that, you know, the town board may authorize the release up to 75% of the surety bond. So, you know, I don't know that you're, first of all, there's not a bond in place. And secondly, even if there were a bond in place, you would be eligible to release up to 75%. Now, there's a second bond that we talk about, and that would be, of course, when you construct something and it's somewhat speculative about how this thing's going to operate. Is it actually going to function the way it was designed and perform the way it's designed? They're required to maintain insurance, which, and not only Dollar General, but any subsequent owner of the liability insurance. I would submit to you the purpose for any liability policy is to guarantee those who may be injured or harmed. And what I would submit is that if you construct something that's not in compliance with whatever the regulations call for, knowingly or unknowingly, that creates a problem. Is it right for someone to bring a lawsuit if they felt that they've been harmed or injured in any way? Now, that ordinance, part of the ordinance, and I was talking to Mr. Strickland today, the way I read it, it allows for a bond 15% of the total construction cost, and I would submit that that is a performance bond to guarantee or ensure that facility that's been constructed responds and retains the water and releases it as it should. There's also a provision in this same statute that says it it's 15% of the cost of construction and/or the cost of the maintenance over a 20-year period. What Mr. Strickland was pointing out to me today, a bond that would accommodate that would exceed, you said what, $100,000?
Yes, sir.
And the construction cost of the basin itself was only about $44,000. And the ordinance, and this ordinance was drafted, I think 2006 is the most recent copy that I found. And I would submit to you, sometimes in these ordinances, things may or may not get turned around or copied correctly, but it calls for whichever is greater. So basically what you're looking at is 15% of the construction of that would be how much?
$5,800, I think is what we calculated.
Yeah, versus 100,000. So there's a big difference there. And it says whichever is greater. And then I think the punitive aspect of it, as I looked at it, would have been that, if it's the bond that you're requiring them to get is far exceeding the bond they should have gotten in the first place, and then secondly, it's almost twice what it costs to construct the catch basin for. My recommendation to you would be to consider that 15% off, and the board determined that that's sufficient. The real problem I think that they have here is that we've been working with Mr. Wes Webbs, who's guiding the town, who is our engineer on this, and he's the one that's sort of holding their feet to the fire and make sure they're doing all the construction the way it's supposed to be done, and it's being inspected. And then we're communicating back and forth about what amount the bond should be. I understand that they have some time concerns and they're nearing completion. What we've got is we prepared a stormwater control measure, access easement, and maintenance agreement. Now, what this agreement will do, and the effect of this will be that once the agreement is signed and put into place, then the agreement will be recorded in the Register of Deeds office. So anybody who buys that piece of property, who's operating that Dollar General store, and the agreement itself says that any future owners, any successive owners of this property will have noted on their deed that this agreement is in place. So it protects the town, protects the citizens who live downhill from these folks, and also the runoff that occurs into the watershed. That's the whole purpose behind it. I hope most of you've ridden by there since we've been talking about it. I know I've ridden by there. I'm not in the construction, but you see it's coming along. They're close to getting to the end. I'm sure they want to be able to move forward with finalizing this thing and getting it in operation. So the agreement is basically in place. They've been told what additional things they need to do. I think, Mr. Strickland, you had talked about a contingency approval, that once those things are approved, of course, the person who has to sign it, I changed it, Mr. Roger Hosey, our town manager, the other person who I would submit, it says attest, but, person who would simply attest to this thing has been approved by the town at this meeting, that there's a contingency approval, that once these numbers have been met, that, and we still need to agree on the numbers for the bond, 2 sets of bonds. And I would suggest that you, in considering this, give it a tentative approval or contingent approval upon all those things being ironed out in the next week or so. As far as, and here's one thing that I left out, was the bond is supposed to be approved by the board. And I guess you need to decide what exactly amount that bond is to be on the construction bond. And then secondly, the amount, is it going to be 15% of the cost of construction? In other words, that 5,000 and something. And if you tell us which direction to go on that, and I know I'm hitting you with these numbers, you probably feel that you should have more time to consider. And certainly I think that's fair, but I think I've said enough for now. Ms. Strickland, is there something else you need to add or you feel I left out or maybe misrepresented? Unintentionally, of course, but misrepresented.
You explained it quite well. I mean, you know, in our opinion, I mean, we're here really to, well, we don't need a, you know, a formal decision tonight, but we're in position to post a temporary bond to get us over the hurdle until, you know, you guys decide what the amount is and, you know, what factor we want to go forward with. And I know Rick explained it quite well. You know, we're sitting over here, the building's done. You know, all the measures are in place. Matter of fact, the corrections were made today on the objections that Wes had. You know, we've got sod planted. We're over irrigating now. Let's come by there. So we're in the final stages of construction and we're ready to move forward. So, you know, we're in a position that we will post a temporary bond to get through that for 90 days, you know, with a TCO in mind that you guys will issue a TCO based on that temporary bond, and then we'll compile the final number at the end and make that, you know, application to the town.
Well, you know, the only problem with a temporary bond is it's temporary. It's 90 days. And that if we can agree, or if, I'm not sure what the organizational structure of your company is, but if the property is sold between you and them, I would have some concern.
But it can't be sold with a temporary CO. We would still be operating under a temporary CO, and we couldn't get an estoppel in the store until we had a permanent CO in place.
Okay.
So that would be a condition of the store.
But we do need to get the stormwater easement and maintenance agreement signed and recorded once those improvements or corrections are made to the basin.
Correct.
Now the easement that's going to be recorded, it doesn't have any specifics as far as, or particulars as far as the numbers as to the amount of the bond. But what it does provide is it relates back to the ordinance. And what the ordinance does, it says, here's how much your bond needs to be. What these gentlemen have done along with West, they provided us with the cost of construction. It actually is a multiplier when you're doing the bond. And by that it simply means that the bond that they have to post and that we talk about is not just what it costs to construct that basin, but 25% over and above what it costs. So in other words, 1.25% of the cost of construction of what the bond ends up being. What they're saying in the position now is they'd otherwise be able to get back 75% of that. So instead of, you know, posting, I think their request is for a 90-day, but I would submit at least for a year that in addition to that 15% performance to make certain that the improvements operating as it should, there also should be 25% that would remain in place. And you could do a stipulation at that point that after the 1 year or 12 months that they could petition and release that and receive it back. They had the option either purchase the bond itself, which would be through basically an insurance company, and or post a cash bond. So they have an option for them as long as you're willing to accept either or.
Now, the total cost of our improvements there, including that multiplier, was $44,914. So if you subtract that $8,900 out of the equation, the total improvements is like $35,000 out the multiplier.
Right. And that's why I was saying when you were referencing the 100,000 bond.
No, that's
twice.
the maintenance aspect.
Yeah, that's on the maintenance. And my suggestion to them was to read it such that they would not. And what he and I are talking about right now, it says you can figure that second bond one or two ways. And one is where you figure 15% of total cost of construction, which would be 15% of the $35,000, I think you were saying.
Correct.
And or 100% of the 20-year maintenance cost. And that's the one you were saying was $100,000, correct?
Yeah, if you take $5,000 yearly cost, multiply by 20, I mean, we're at $100,000, we're having to post a bond for it. And the industry standard, I mean, and we work in a lot of states, I mean, and our most severe is in Florida. And our folks, the time period they've ever posted one is 3 years in Florida. So that's what we're trying to work around globally here, trying to figure out where we're going to be at. Because I mean, that's a lot of baggage when we try to sell this thing. We got a 20-year bond looming out there over the head of this thing, you know, and trying to get that number to where it's appealing for folks.
From my construction old days, a bond, if I had to post a $100,000 bond for an electrical project, it was a small percentage, like buying an insurance policy. What would the actual cost out of pocket be if they had to do the maximum amount of the bond? Do you know that? What's the insurance cost you for the bond?
I mean, our rate would probably be, what, 2.5%, 3%?
So
Somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah.
So, over 100,000 you'd be spending.
But this thing would have to be renewed yearly.
Yeah.
And for, you know, our buyer on the other end to have to deal with this thing on a yearly basis, it would be better off for us to post a cash bond that would be issued back to us after the termination of the bond itself. That's what we're trying to negotiate now, is that final number.
And I'm curious why the initial bond wasn't posted.
You know, we've been through a lot here in the town the last year.
Yeah. Yes, we have.
And you know, the fact is it wasn't, and the fact is there's quite a few things that these folks are working, our new town manager, everybody, working hard to take a step back and say, look, you know, we shouldn't have gone into some of these situations quite the way we did.
I understand.
So they're trying, they really are.
So this project, excuse me if I'm interrupting, so this project dates back to last year.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, we were.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
without saying, okay?
I'm sorry.
Our engineer and our public works director is satisfied with the quality of what's been done, and do you have any reservations about it performing, or?
I spoke with Wes today on the phone.
Our engineer,
and he was pleased with the outcome, so he has no concerns.
I know $5,000 or $6,000 for the bond sounds a lot to me, would be out of my pocket, but if for some reason that flooded someone's home down the street, we've had some claims where they wanted $10,000 because they claim we caused the flood into their property. That's what keeps ringing in my bell. But I would not object to some temporary thing to let us get a little bit better feel for it, but I'll let you advise us.
Well, I think that is probably a good idea, because, you know, we've been struggling to make sure that we have the most recent ordinance, and that we're looking at all the same things. And and that would give you an opportunity, the board an opportunity to take a step back and familiarize yourself with it as much as you want, so you feel comfortable with your decision.
I think a temporary would be a good solution, in my opinion.
We're going to need a recommendation from you then. On how much, or, I know they won't move.
So if it's 90 days, how much should it be?
When you're proposing the 90-day temporary, what amount is that?
Proposing to post that on the $44,000 amount with a 125 multiplier on it. Yeah.
With the understanding that I read 2 bonds.
Yeah, the maintenance bond also is going to be worked out. And that's something they may need to do internally there and decide on that. And this allows us to move forward to get to the game where we can open the solar on temporary. So yeah, I understand. Yeah, I know there may be some internal conversations that be had over this to see what the final deal is going to be on the maintenance aspect. Because in our mind, we see things one way, and I know you interpret things, you know, a little differently.
Well, you know,
That's a staggering number.
You know, it talks about 100% of the cost of maintaining, and it says over a 20-year period. And it talks, or the 15%, and it says whichever is greater. When I read whichever's greater, it seems fairly clear to me. But then I understand that this was talking about something that's a little old as far as industry standards is concerned. That is the ordinance itself. And then, of course, it is an ordinance, and it's an ordinance that could be modified quite easily. And it could simply say whichever is acceptable to the board. And that would require a modification of the ordinance itself, is the only issue we have. And I think, Brandon, one of the things that he has said the last several months is that, we need to take a good look at our ordinances and see if we're doing everything we should do, we could do. And I think there's state of North Carolina is requiring all cities and towns to do a step back and do some sort of program by 2021, I think. That's correct. Where you're reviewing all of the ordinance, planning and zoning. So my recommendation would be to go with the 90-day temporary, give us a...
So you're saying that the motion needs to be to accept this temporarily with the 90-day bond, right?
I guess it would be two motions. One, I think you were provided with a stormwater control measures.
That seemed pretty cut and dried.
Okay, and there would be one.
You need another motion to accept the 90-day bond.
Correct.
Okay. I move that we accept the stormwater control measure, access agreement, and maintenance agreement as supplied to us today, and that the town manager signs it.
I second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Now, the second motion is to accept our 90-day bond temporarily until we get things worked out with the town.
What's the amount of that?
I've got 44,914.
Correct. 44,914. I so move.
Second.
Have a motion and have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any discussion?
Thank you, guys.
Now to get them working.
Yeah.
Just the door.
Get them open.
Now I can do the annexation.
Maybe it'll be quicker.
I was getting excited over an annexation.
You were, you really do.
Francis, the owner who owns Haskell Hardware, reached out to the town of Landis and is wanting to do a voluntary annexation on tax map number 156-08101. This actually butts up to the rear of his property. He's going to make this into an additional parking lot. He's overflowing within the parking lot that he has now. So we need to set a public hearing for our...
So no houses are going to be built on this property?
No, sir. It's just going to be...
Just keep adding it on to what he already has inside the city limits?
That is correct, sir.
That was my main question there.
Yes, sir. So we would need to set a public hearing for October the 7th for the voluntary annexation.
I move that we have a public hearing on October the 7th for the voluntary annexation of this property.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, please board, the next item will be mine. It's the budget amendments. Before you tonight, you've got a budget amendment that's pretty sizable, but it's a very good budget amendment. It reflects $834,000 in unanticipated, unbudgeted income, and how we're going to handle that. The income sources was $25,000 in the form of a grant that the police department was awarded, $100,000 from insurance proceeds related to the investigation that's going on, and $709,000 in proceeds from North Carolina Municipal Power Agency number 1. Now those proceeds, as explained to me, essentially were excess profits that were realized by our partial ownership of the Catawba Nuclear Station, where the reactor didn't have to be taken offline. So operating costs were less than expected, and it was able to create more current than was expected. So we were able to get a combination of credit and cash transfer back in of $709,000. Now, it's a one-time disbursement. It's not something that we're going to be able to count on annually. Given the fact that our fund balance is in the condition that it's in, I think it was just the good Lord looking out for us, and that's how I intend to treat it with your approval. So the amendment does a couple of things. The full 709 would come into the electrical fund. From that, we would transfer $500,000 from the electrical fund to the general fund. The insurance proceeds are already here, and the police grant proceeds are already here, and there will be a reimbursement. Those are general fund anyways. So the administration expenses, the total expenses across the board, we're looking at an increase of $107,000. We're going to add some things in here with our newfound money, but the vast majority of it is going to go towards savings. So out of that $834,000, $107,000 is going to be spent, and I'll go over on how we're going to spend that, and set the remaining $727,000 will go all towards fund balance. So the under administration, there's a $25,000 increase. That's $8,000 of that goes to some office improvements, specifically related to security and a little bit of upgrades there. $2,000 to some network security upgrades that need to be done, and $15,000 will go towards salary adjustments to our new finance officer, who I'll introduce shortly. The under the police department, the $25,000 grant income will also show as a grant expense, so it will wash. There's no match for that. That's all federal money that's being passed through the state. There is $2,000 appropriated of local money to buy a replacement laptop. We gained an officer, but we didn't gain a laptop for him, so that kind of shorted us there. So our spare got put in the service, and it's created some issues there. In the street department, the leaf machine, if you recall during the budget process, we budgeted $80,000 for the leaf machine. That actually came back a little bit higher, and the cost on that's going to be about $85,000, so it increases that appropriation by $5,000. In the sanitation department, it appropriates $20,000 to clean up a mulch pile, and it may be more appropriate to call it a mulch mountain. It's a large deposit where the city for decades has been depositing leaves and mulch and stuff on some property, and without going through a long story, essentially we're in a situation now where the Department of Natural Resources has came in, identified this as a problem, and has issued us paperwork stating that it's necessary for us to correct this. Otherwise, there's going to be some fines and stuff that can eventually come into place. So it's not a thing of if we want to do this, it's a thing of we have to do this as far as the mulch pile goes. Under the electric budget, we're proposing allocate $25,000 for a software system that's, I think, going to be very, very, very popular with our residents. Some residents that have PSNC or may have had new power at a private or a previous address or something are familiar with the portals that you can log in and you can see your usage. I know we get a lot of questions here at Town Hall. Staff fields a lot of questions, and then the field staff, like Chris Ritchie that works for Ron, our water and sewer superintendent, he constantly goes out because people are saying, well, I think I might have a water leak. I think this might have happened. A lot of times it's just a flapper on a toilet that's hung up or something simple. This software will allow each individual resident to log in and on a day-by-day breakdown look at their individual water and electrical usages. Further, if they want to, they can go in and set trigger conditions to get proactively alerted if one of those trigger conditions are met. For example, if I knew that I was going out of town and I should have very little water usage, I could have it text or email me if my water usage went above 10 gallons a day. On a normal time, I want to make sure that there's not a leak. I can say if I'm using more than 250 gallons a day, to send me an alert. So I think this is a very good faith and due diligent effort that we can do to our citizens to provide them increased transparency into actually what their usages are, especially given there's no reason to sugarcoat it, the lack of trust between the citizens and the town regarding utilities right now. I think anything we can do to give them increased insight to that is invaluable. Thankfully, the smart meter implementation project on paper is still considered an open project, so that's why we're able to get it realized at this price. The initial quote we got for them was about $13,000 more than this, and so we went back and talked to them. Since it was still open, they're not going to charge us basically another project maintenance fee, so we're going to be able to save about $13,000 by going ahead and implementing it. And then on the last thing is on the water side. We have been notified again by the state that even though we don't have a water treatment facility, that since we inject chemicals into the water system here to keep our water at acceptable levels, that injection of chemicals is considered a treatment function. So even though we have staff who are certified for water distribution, they're of the opinion, the state has taken the position rather, that we don't have anyone on staff who is appropriately certified for that particular function. We've weighed the options, looked at it. It's a situation we're going to have to address pretty quickly. And it's very minimally involved. And we had some discussion, Brandon actually had some discussion with the Public Works Department down at the City of Kannapolis. And they're willing to provide that oversight and sign off on that and monitor it for us, basically as a contract service for just a couple $1,000s a year. So that's far cheaper, obviously, than we could hire new staff or any of the other options that we've looked at. So you see a $5,000 appropriation for that. But in summary, the budget amendment before you increases the total income by $834,000, increases total expenses by $107,000, increases our savings by $727,000. Now, in the original budget, our savings was set at $573,750. So when you combine that this fiscal year between the monies that we're talking about tonight based off the amendment, the vast majority of which are the NCMPA 1 funds, combined with all the other funds that we had realized and saved and worked through the budget process, we're looking at committing $1.3 million plus another $750 to the fund balance over the course of this fiscal year, which I think is just remarkable. So if the board has any questions about the budget amendment, I would be happy to answer them.
Do you need a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion we accept the budget amendments.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good explanation.
Thanks, sir. On department head comments, I'm going to kind of jump the line here and go first, if I may. It's my, as everyone knows, we had the finance officer position posted for a couple months, received several applications for that. Once we got into the interview process, the choice was readily apparent. Brandon, Kenny, and I, all three, sat on the interview panel. And quite frankly, there was a standout choice for us, and that's Ms. Diane Seifert, who is here before you tonight. I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce her to the board and to the citizens. Ms. Seifert has a very strong background. She worked at Cabarrus County as an accountant and actually was their budget officer, worked there for some time, worked her way up as a physical analyst, and spent about 21 years at Bank of America, and ultimately left there as a senior vice president. So she has an impeccable background. She has a master's from Pfeiffer University in business administration, and I think she's going to be a tremendous asset to us. Her first working day is Wednesday, so we're really excited to have her on board and to welcome her to Landis, and we expect great things.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome.
I'm going to report on the fire department first. For the month of August, we ran 56 calls, and this other night, you may know, we had a structure fire with about 70% involvement of a house on Saturday night. Our battalion chief, Stephen Overcast, was the first in on it, and the crews and him and all of our mutual aid, they did an awesome and outstanding job. And I also would like to thank the police force that was out there to help us. As far as Parks and Recs, the pool is closed for the season. We just had I thought, successful cruise-in last Friday night. Our next one is scheduled for October the 4th, which will be a Friday night also. And for as far as construction, the pad that was to be repaired in front of the Station 58, which is cross street for the ladder bay, that has been completed. We have to wait for another 10 days for it to cure. That's why the ladder truck's been parked outside here. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but we put it there so it could be more readily available for our crews to come get. We looked at the option of storing it inside of Public Works, but we didn't want them to have to come over there, open the gate. So another 10 days of that inconvenience, and it should be back to the station. And as far as that's pretty much it, other than a reminder of the farmers market. We have a new sign out there, and hopefully that people, I think it's maybe one more month of that. Is that true? And that's pretty much all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Gentlemen, I want to do, if I may, a brief update on the investigation. At this point, we can say that the forensic audit is in its final stages. We look for that report to be released to the SBI, and they will be finishing up their investigation. I do not have a timeline. I know that's what you want. We simply do not know. So I did want to give you that much, because we can say that.
Thank you, Chief.
Ron and I went to Raleigh a week and a half ago, and unfortunately, concerning the passive park, we did not get that grant. However, we will try again next year to get it. But that's the sad news I have about the passive park.
Have you heard any more about the grant over there, or FEMA from on the lake?
So, in reference to the $11.6 million FEMA project that's going on, FEMA and myself have been waiting to hear back from the Corps of Engineers in reference to some work that was authorized that we did not receive permits for, that the former administration approved. And so we've been waiting to hear back from the Corps of Engineers. Actually, I just heard back from them Friday evening, and they have approved the work that's been done. And so this is going to be able for us to go to the next step for the FEMA grant. So I do have a meeting with our FEMA contact sometime, I believe, at the end of this week.
No.
Stop there.
Each does
Next, it's board member. Seth, you first.
I'd like to welcome you to the town. It's nice to have a finance officer back, someone who's actually qualified for the job. And then I would also like to take this time to speak, because I wasn't here at the last meeting, and go ahead and give some opinions of mine of what the actions of the board. I'd like to preface this first by saying that Hosey is a friend of mine, and all of the things that I'm about to say, nothing is against him personally or of him being the pick for town manager, but of the actions and the process that was taken in doing so. And I think that he is a trustworthy individual, an honest person, not involved in anything with the investigation in the past, has done tremendous work over the last couple of months to get us in the position that we are in, and I commend him greatly for that and all the work that he's done But with the process that was taken, I do disagree with how we went about it as a board. And with the process, how we did with the finance director, we posted an opening and looked for applicants for the job. Now, had we done this with the town manager, I do still believe that we could have ended up at the conclusion that Roger Hosey would be the best fit for the town, as maybe someone who is more experienced. I know that the city of Raleigh, the town manager, the salary is $165,000 a year. So if we had someone who had experience from the state, someone from the city of Charlotte, Raleigh, such as it is, we wouldn't be able to afford a salary. Well, taking aside all of the illegal funds that were stolen, we would not be able to legally or rightfully afford a town manager at a salary of that. So I believe with the process, if we had seen someone who was more experienced, we wouldn't want to hire them because we wouldn't be able to afford them. We wouldn't want to go with someone who's straight out of college, 4 years for a bachelor, and then I believe it's 2 years for a master's in public administration. That would have them sitting at 24 years. And although they would have the education, they wouldn't have the experience. So Hosey, I believe, is smart and intelligent and capable of doing the job. And now that's set in the contract, he's able to get his master's in public administration. I believe that he would be okay with the job. But the process is that we had an opportunity to set a precedent and win back trust from the citizens who have known that within the past we had a town manager who was the fire chief, who did this, who did that, and worked in multiple capacities. Now, while I trust Hosey and have no concerns with him doing the things that happened with our previous town manager, I think that this would have been a good process to have taken, like we did with the finance director, to do it with the town manager, to show that we are trying to do a process instead of just picking someone to go in. Also, there are 3 board members up here who are not going to be on the board in the fall. The 3 of us are not running for re-election. So that goes and tells you that there are 3 members of the board who are not going to be here come November, December. So the majority is leaving, and I don't see why this board, with the majority leaving, should have been the ones to hire a town manager, and that it should have possibly have gone to the next board and allowed them to do it, since those 3 new members, regardless of who they are, those 3 new members would be here long-term and working with the town manager. And I do know that at the time I had expressed some concerns with Kenny and a couple of the other board members about the dual roles and the process. And I do know that I am disappointed in the way that Tony had voted. I know that after one of our meetings, he came up to me after a meeting and rolled down his window and was like, "Seth, now I've heard there's rumors, amongst the other board members that we're trying to put Hosey in as multiple positions, as town manager, as a police chief, as this and that. And Seth, I've heard you say yourself that you're against people holding multiple positions in the town. And I expect you to stand with me against this when the time comes." Now, I was away in Florida on family vacation at the last meeting, so I wasn't able to stand against the multiple positions at the time. So I was disappointed that Tony chose to go along with it when he said he saw the light. So the process that I believe that should have been taken was that we scan for applicants, we do a process, Hosey can apply and compete, and like I said earlier, I believe that he still could have walked away with the job, and at least we would have gone through a process. Now, the conflict of interest with multiple positions, I've spoken with multiple law enforcement officials in multiple cities, counties, and those who are in the state, and some of those are involved with the SBI investigation, and they had said that there's nowhere in North Carolina that has someone who is a town manager and the chief of police. Now, while Hosey is currently only deputy chief of police, in the next board, it's in the contract, can choose to not allow him to take over as the chief of police once Kenny resigns. Not resigns, sorry, I take that back, retires. So it's one of those things where, while it's in the contract, nowhere in the state of North Carolina does this exist, and there is a conflict of interest there. Also, the contract that was brought to the board, and I'm going to also preface this, if I were Hosey, I would have done the exact same thing. Now, Hosey was approached by board members to become the town manager and police chief and other roles, continuing some of the IT work, and Hosey went and had a contract made up by a lawyer. And if I were him, I would have done the exact same thing, looking out for my best interest. But to my knowledge, I wasn't in the executive session. There were no negotiations made with the contract that was brought to the board. And if I were to go to my employer and say, this is what salary I want, this is, I want this kind of a company car, I want this kind of bonus, I want this kind of thing, I want my education paid for, they laugh in my face. And this board is the employer. We are the governing board of this town, and we are the employer of town of Landis. And I'm really disappointed that there were no negotiations at all to do anything for, the education expenses, breaking down the salary per position instead of a lump salary, and looking after the best interests of the town. With my employer, I'm able to get $5,000 a year of education reimbursement, of which I have a stake in the education. So I have to front all the money for the tuition, books, room and board. And if, I'm able to pass and have a certain grade, point average, or high pass, low pass, you name it, then my employer would reimburse me up to $5,000 for my education. And in this particular contract, now, if I were Hosey, I would have wrote it up the exact same way, if not, maybe even more for whatever, but, I would be looking after my best interests because I'm choosing to write the contract for myself and do the negotiations, but this board chose no negotiations at the time. And that's all I have to say.
You're next. First off, I'd like to welcome our new finance director. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
It's always an honor and a privilege. Also, I'd like to say that there was negotiations on the contract with Roger Hosey. He had made several changes in the contract that some of the board members have made suggestions to, and I personally stand behind making the decision to hire Roger Hosey. It was a good decision on the town's part. He got a man that was willing to dedicate and was loyal to the town of Landis and see that problems that had been faced would be met and the future problem be taken care of. We lowered the electric rates for the town of Landis. We've worked to contain the water and sewer rates. We started a road program and continuing the road program. We have a budget that is one of the best budgets we've ever done. That's line items so everybody can understand what is being spent by our budget. And I feel like all of this is for the town's best interest, and I do support Roger Hosey as town manager fully, and I look forward to working with him in the future. Also, I'd like to say that I don't appreciate the comments made by Alderman Moore and online or in the paper about this board. I think he showed his ignorance and immaturity and disrespect for this board. We should not be making comments like that about board members. It's just uncalled for. It's bad decision. And that's all I have.
I don't have anything much. Just from a personal point of view, I did spend probably an hour with Roger on the contract. He made, I don't know, 5 or 6 changes after our negotiation. Some things I thought should be different, and he made those changes before we got the final contract. So there was negotiation. It wasn't public negotiation. It was private with us, and he made all the changes I requested. And our attorney reviewed the contract to make sure we as a town wasn't doing something we should not do. So I feel good about it. There's something about the educational thing. Isn't it stretched over 3 years, several years or something? And
It's a full ride.
Yes, sir. It's over the life of the contract. It's not payable to me. It's payable to the institution, and it's over the life of the contract. That's not an annual amount.
good, thank you. I'm done.
Well, I reserve the right to change my mind, although I tell my wife I'd like to change my mind. She reminds me I have to pick your team to let me change my mind. I just have a question for the finance director. Can you count past 10 without taking your shoes off?
Pardon?
Can you count past 10 without taking your shoes off?
I hope so.
All right.
I'm making my
Bobby, regardless of what my sister said at the Saginaw restaurant, are not mouthpieces for Mike Mahaley. Mike has not covered up anything for anybody. A waitress told me she saw Mike and Reed going into a lawyer's office as if Mike was hiring a lawyer to cover for Reed. That was her insinuation. She didn't know that the lawyer where Mike and Reed was going was our town attorney. I said, what a dingbat you are. You moved here from the edge of Landis all this time. You didn't know Rick Locklear was our town attorney. Anyway, I told the reason I went in there so he could be told to read the riot act, he resigned or be fired. This is another example of somebody that pays no taxes in Landis, that's outside the city limits, is running their mouth, and stuff they don't know what they're talking about. Another guy at the townhouse told me that this happened on Mike's watch, all this happened on Mike's watch, and he should have known what was happening. Well, this started 10 years ago when Dennis Brown was mayor, and then James Ford got to be mayor. So if y'all want to fuss at somebody, call them guys, ask them why they didn't catch this, and why they didn't know about it. There's also town accountants that certify these accounts and budgets every year for 10 years in a row that didn't catch this. Another fellow told me that his son's power bill was $725, just a power bill. So I got a copy of his power bill, took it to him. Power bill was $313. The rest of the water went to fill in his swimming pool. Now, this is after there's a broadcast all over Jimmy's restaurant. 40 people in there heard how high his power bill was. Now, me and Bobby were up there Sunday eating lunch, and this lady approached us. What are you charging that $30 a month for? What did she say? Make the town richer, or what did she say?
Something about
crap about that. And we said, well, it's always been on there. No, it hasn't. We told her it's being transparent. Now it's pointed out what that charge is for. How many years has it been on there? A long time?
Long time. It's just been part of the regular.
Kenny and Roger have worked diligently with a lot of extra days, overtime, coming in early in the morning, staying in the evenings, to get the town's accounts in order. The town is getting short to be very, very solid and promising. I was mistaken about some town employees, and if you fault finders and haters and rumor mongers, with others come into town and talk to these people, you would have a different outlook about the town's business. These people handle literally tens of thousands of papers constantly coming from the county, state, and federal government. It's not an easy job. Get off the negative wave and try to be positive. Thank you.
I have additional comments that I would like to say if the board would allow me to do so. If not, I'll have 3 minutes of citizen comments before I signed up.
I'm going to start off by saying I'm proud of hiring Roger Harrison. The majority of you people, and I'm not running for office. I don't have to sit up here and act like I've acted officially for about the last year and a half when people come up here, insult me, insult my family. I'm going to act like I'm married, you understand? And I'm going to say what's on my mind. I am proud of hiring Roger Harrison. I think he's an outstanding person. When this investigation started, contrary to what some people say, there would have been no investigation until Roger and Kenny brought me a paper authorizing them to investigate. A lot of rumors, and that's what a lot of it was. Nothing but rumors. There would have been no investigation. Number one, let me explain to you why. If Kenny would have gone up to him, he's a police chief. I want y'all to think about this and take this home with you tonight, and said something to Reed. Because we had a really good idea for about 4 or 5 months what was going on. Well, the first thing Reed would have done was fire Kenny, and he could have done it with no questions asked. He could have also fired Roger. He could have fired anybody that worked for him except for a board member. That's why I was elected. That's why they came to me to do it, and we've been talking about it. So let's just get that straight right there to start with. Believe what you want. A lot of you don't want to believe the truth. You've shown that for about 7 or 8 months by your actions. When you come in here, you come into our meeting, you talk during the meeting, you sit over here on your phones is lightening up. I've asked you 4 or 5 times at different meetings, please don't talk. Be considerate of somebody that wants to be here and find out what's going on. You don't do that. Now, most of you have been ladies and gentlemen, but it's the same 8 or 10 every month. And you know what? When you sit in this chair, in that chair, that's what you're here for. We take it. Roger Hosey and Kenny Eisenhower, along with this board, over the last probably 8 to 9 months, we have put over, Bobby give you a little rundown too on some of the stuff. We have put over $1 million back in savings. Besides buying equipment we haven't been able to get for years. That's what you can do when you find a discrepancy when somebody's stealing from you. That's exactly what it amounts to. But if nobody else that has sit in this chair would have found this any more than we did.
Then I did.
Beg pardon?
Then I did.
You didn't find anything. I'm not going to argue with you.
Sorry, I got 3 minutes of that podium.
You've had your time to talk.
I've got 3 minutes of that podium. I have 3 minutes of that podium for citizens' comment. I'm going to set the record straight.
Are you going to step down and go to citizens'
I will go.
I told you the truth. I have listened to this about this young man here, right here, about what he done and what he didn't do. Tony Coyer, now we're going to get this out. No, Tony Coyer come up and told me 5 or 6 months before that some people down at the golf course had told him what was going on. And I said, we got to have some proof. Well, we talked to some people down there, nobody would come forward because they would lose their job. It's just that simple. Just like Kenny or Roger would have lost their job. They couldn't take my job. It's just that simple. If Bobby had been the mayor, or Tommy, they could have done the same thing. But it had to be authorized to open up an investigation by the SBI. Now, you go out of here with what you want to believe tonight. But just think about what's going on at these meetings the last year or so, especially with the way one board member's acting.
I'm the most professional one that we've got.
You're out of order. I'm talking. I have the floor. Do it again.
You're the most incompetent mayor that Landis has ever had.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. And you are definitely the most unethical, smart mouth, smart ass.
Oh,
Why didn't they say
professional? That's what he is. I've dealt with him for 4 years. I'm not going to have to deal with him no more.
I've had him a long time.
Now,
Go smack him.
well, Ron's been talking about cruising and everything right there. That's all I have. Next on our agenda is
Citizens' comments.
citizens' comments.
Mr. Mayor, the first citizen on the list is Ms. Nadine Cherry.
Nadine Cherry, 410 West Garden Street in Landis. Seth, I appreciate you. I know we had, a little rough go about 2 years ago. But that was trying to bring out what's going on and has been going on. And folks, we've got a person sitting up there right now that is going to run for mayor. That used to be over here across the road with the Nationwide. Talking about embezzlement. It happened in your office, in your business. I know, I was a customer. So I just want people to realize We have got 3 very good people that are running, one for alderman and, one for mayor and 2 for alderman. And we had a real good meeting yesterday. And people, could ask questions. We weren't interrupted or anything. But like I'm saying, it kind of behooves me that there was an embezzlement at your business. I'm not saying it was you, I'm just saying there was an embezzlement. I've got documentation, I've been searching. And also, whenever you done your interview with Salisbury Post, you only named 2 jobs that you had done, and they were the one at the prison in Cabarrus and the one at Rowan. And why were these other jobs not brought up? Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine.
Ms. Gay Roberts.
My name is Gay Roberts. I live at 506 North Central Avenue. I'm here tonight to remind you about the upcoming candidates forum on October the 3rd at 6 p.m. at Coyer Light Middle School auditorium. The moderator for that event is Josh Bergeron, editor of the Salisbury Post. And for your information, all the candidates for mayor and alderman have been invited to attend. I encourage all voting citizens to attend as well. Let's show our love for our town and to show that we love our town and care about choosing the best candidates for our town by attending the candidates forum. If you don't know the candidates, this is a way to get to know them. You also have the opportunity to send questions for the candidates to answer at the forum. You will need to submit your question by email to the editor at salisburypost.com, and I would recommend that you do that as soon as possible as well. I would like to thank the Rowan Chamber of Commerce and Coyer Light Middle School for accommodating this event. And at the end of the meeting tonight, I have a handout that I'll give to you that has all the information on that I gave you tonight, and I would encourage you to pass this along to your friends and neighbors.
Thank you.
Mr. David Roberts.
I have some prepared comments, and I would like to hand them out, if I may, to the people on the town board, and then I will read these comments to you. My name is David A. Roberts. My wife and I reside at 506 North Central Avenue in Landis, along the railroad tracks near the American Legion building. I wish to say thank you to the board members and the mayor for your willingness to serve as an elected official for the town of Landis over the past 4 years or longer. I am sure that there are many other things that you could be doing with your time rather than your duties with the town. About 3,500 years ago, our Creator Heavenly Father spoke to humanity through His servant Moses with guidelines for living the human life in a way that would provide blessings to them. This was known as the 10 Commandments, which some people today like to call the 10 Suggestions. One of those 10 is called the 9th Commandment and reads as follows: You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. I take that to mean that you shall not lie. At the town board meeting last month, Roger Hosey was appointed as town manager and was assigned other duties as well. In the article in the Salisbury Post the next day, Mayor Mike Mahaley stated that the town of Landis was being pressured by the local government commission to appoint a town manager. My wife and I talked by phone about 2 weeks ago with Sharon Edmondson with the local government commission about the town manager appointment, as well as the comments by the mayor and the newspaper. She said that she became aware of the town manager appointment and that she was surprised as we were with that information. She told me that the local government commission had not been pressuring the elected officials of the town of Landis to appoint a town manager, but had been strongly encouraging them to appoint a town finance officer, as you guys have done today. By my definition, the information passed along to the citizens of Landis by the mayor about the reasons for the Roger Hosey appointment was a falsehood. Call it a lie. There were obviously other reasons why the current elected officials felt compelled to act at the August meeting in appointing Roger Hosey. I can only assume that the current elected officials wanted to extend their current control of town of Landis matters well into the months and perhaps even years ahead, thus denying newly elected officials at the December meeting from carrying out their preferred duties as newly elected officials. Why not be truthful and state the real reason why the current board acted as they did at the August meeting? We want to know the truth. Thank you.
Mrs. Vicki Lumsden.
I'm Vicki Lumsden at 2887 North Cannon Boulevard. And before the meeting, I passed out to you all some pictures of South Upright Street, right behind my home. I've been before the board and Brendan and several department heads several times about this road. As you are aware, Town of Landis restructured the, the lift station down there, completely redid it. And it took them probably at least a year and a half to do so. While they were doing that, they completely destroyed South Upright Street, along with part of my 2 driveways. This is a dead-end road that dead ends now to Vanquish Fencing Company. Now, they're so distraught about it that they put up a fence there so no one can drive through their yard anymore. So, but the town trucks have always used my lower drive, paved drive, to turn around in. They did the whole time that they were restructuring the lift station, but they also did my upper driveway, which had just been repaved by me. So I'm not asking the town to come out and pave my whole driveways. I just want them to fix all these potholes down through there. Our cars drag trying to get into the driveways because of the potholes. And the road, our driveway and the road's completely destroyed. I mean destroyed. If you want to ride down there and take a look at it, I'd be glad for you to. But no one has until today really seen the pictures, what it looks like.
Ms. Lumsden, if I may, the second phase of the paving project is set to begin either late September or early October is going to repave that entire section of the street.
That all the way from Dial Street down? Well, and then they'll probably fan out and get my little parts of my driveway right there at the beginning of my driveway. But that would be nice because it's completely chewed up.
Ms. Munfrey, I had talked to you about a month ago when you called me
I think
concerns
so.
with that. And yes, that was on the bidding process. And when I was out there with the contractor, I asked if he could do like a little entrance to your driveway there.
Yeah, I got you.
So I'm sorry that hasn't been done from that now, but there was been no money set aside till a year ago for paving. And since that was basically a right-of-way, in a sense, for the lift station and just served a couple of residents, it wasn't on the first stage of priorities, but it is now.
Well, I want to call out to you that Mr. Harold Brown is the one that paved that road about halfway down. He did that as well as my lower driveway, which ends at the road. He did all of that as a favor to the town of Landis. years and years ago. The town of Landis didn't even pave that road. It's really sort of kind of like one of those gravel kind of roads. But he did that and himself, and so as a courtesy. But that was nice. But the first picture that you look out there is the one that comes into Bright Street from Dial Street, and it's horrible. I just got that way recently. But the truck you see there has been mentioned to Brandon, I think, before. No one lives in that mobile home now, Brandon. And I think Bill Barger took some pictures, he said, and was going to show to you. The trash truck has to back down that road, and he barely misses that truck. And so Mr. Barger, I don't think is here anymore, but he wanted to move that truck down into the driveway where it belongs. Emergency vehicles can't get down by there, nor trash trucks backing up. So that truck needs to be moved for whatever reason it does. So it's been brought up before.
Thank you, young lady.
Ms. Katie Sells.
Katie Sales, 717 South Main, Landis. Good evening. Ms. Seifert, thank you. We really hope you can do some great things for our town. I'm here tonight to bring forward some information to the citizens of Landis just to prove wasteful spending when the checks and balances continues. The week of July 22nd through the 26th, I requested in person all credit card statements for all employees, mayor, and aldermen. I understood my request may not have been fully understood, but the only records I received were Dolan Abernathy's. His records from June, July, and August of 2014. I found these records interesting, but I was not surprised by what was on the statement. Still wanted the information, I submitted an email to Mr. Hosey requesting the information of all employees, mayors, and aldermen. Understanding that some of the records I was requesting was not public records due to the investigation. I fully understand that. But I did receive, and I greatly appreciate Mr. Hosey accommodating me, statements for May, June, and July of 2019 from the following employees and the mayor: Jessica Stanford, John Josselt, Kevin Young, Mark Kroll, Mike Mahaley, Roger Hosey, Ron Miller, Shane Seifert, Brandon Lynn, Chris Ritchie, and Charles Sheets. As I was looking through the statements, I was amazed at the spending at the local eateries. Lynn's again in Kannapolis, Mike Mahaley 4 times. Flying Buffaloes in Kannapolis, Roger Hosey once. On the Border in Concord, Ron Miller once. Brown's Place in Landis, Brandon Lynn 1 time, Mike 4 times. Cracker Barrel in Concord, Mike 1 time. Hardee's in China Grove, Ron Miller twice. Logan's in Kannapolis, Mike twice. Speedy's Barbecue in Lexington by Mike once. KFC in Kannapolis by Brandon once. Little Caesars by Charles once. Which all this totaled up to be $898.49 just on food. When I asked for purchase orders and/or expense reports for these purchases, the credit card statements, I was informed by Hosey the town does not have or use expense reports. Since the town does not require expense reports, we as citizens can just assume this is personal spending of eating. I did request the purchase orders for all of May, June, July statements only to be informed that currently the town is undergoing both the audit annually and a forensic audit. While they were doing the screening and the interviewing applications with the finance officer, my request may be limited or delayed. However, if I was willing to pay $446.13, I could have all the information on a delayed schedule. So, citizens of Landis, our money continues to be wasted, and there's still no transparency in this town. Thank you.
Katie, the Speedy's Barbecue was for the town employees. That was a town party here. If you would have asked someone, you would have been told that. I'm talking now.
I was told by him, but
was you told that was, okay, it wasn't for me. And every ticket on there that had my name on it was a town employee or a fireman or...
There we go, citizens, we're feeding everyone.
Yeah, well, if you work like they did...
Maybe we should get on their...
Maybe you
on
should
their
think
budget.
about it, yeah, maybe you should think about it, so.
Well, the
get
state of
your-
North Carolina
I don't
doesn't do
mind
that.
any facts, but I'll tell you what, don't just bring part of it like you usually do.
Oh, I have all of it, Mike, I have all the
Well,
credit.
that's
If
fine.
anyone wants it, I will make copies for you and
That's
give them to
fine.
you.
Now, I'm not through. What is this I hear about? I wasn't gonna bring this up because it's kind of inappropriate. But I believe the last year that we done a golf tournament, you got paid $1,000 by the
I
time.
sure did on yours.
Right.
On your time.
You did.
So, Reed and Ginger contacted my husband and I, because we own a bar service called Carolina Girl Bar Service, and we do private bar events like we did this weekend for over 300 people, that we serve alcohol. We are licensed, we have insurance. So when Reed and Ginger contacted us, we contacted our attorney. We discussed it with him because we were very hesitant about it. But he said, would you turn down anyone else? And we said no. We drew up a contract. I still have the contract signed. I have submitted an invoice. The town cut me a check. I provided the service. There we go. It's business, folks.
Reed and Ginger didn't have permission.
Well, that's
They
between you and
didn't have
them.
permission about it.
Permission for anything they did.
By the way, that's $1,000 for about 3.5 hours work.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yep.
Thank you, Meredith.
Miss Linda Connell.
I am not a citizen of Rowan County, of Landis, but I've been in business 47 years here. I think it's a wonderful town. I'm sorry about what's happened. It's very embarrassing, but we need to work together instead of blab-de-blab. I'm glad of our new man over here, Mr. Hosey, and we need to work together, and I think Mike Haley has done a wonderful job with the pressure you've been under. So we need to work together and stop fussing and quarreling. You don't get anywhere for that, but you can work together, and that's what I hope we will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Hey, dear.
Mr. James Moore.
James Moore, 325 Daywood Drive. I stand here as a citizen and also stand here as a father.
That's right.
I'm proud to be Seth. And I think the things that you'd be embarrassed for is you've been transparent, son. I appreciate it. It's tough taking the stand against wrong. I wish I had some Clorox wipes. Not only, your behaviors, it affects your testimony too.
That's right.
And I just think there's a lot of mess that's going on here.
Preach.
And you need to handle it professionally.
Preach.
I work for Duke Energy, a major corporation. I've led teams of 100. You can't act like that. I'll lose my job. And we're looking for a change in this board.
Amen.
Thank you.
Miss Sharon McCarty.
Sharon McCarty, 320 Tranquil Lake Drive. I have 3 items on my list, and I just want Seth to know that this was on my list to begin with. Mr. Hosey, you may be the best choice, but I agree that transparency was not there and what the town is striving for. There was no interviews, there was no application process. And again, you may be the best candidate, but the process was not very transparent. My next item is, it's my understanding there was a settlement between the town and the church, Mount Moriah Church, which involved a land dispute. So based on there being a settlement, I would assume the town is acknowledging that they applied for and received a part of grant and erected facilities on property they did not own.
What happened during the grant, one of the things that was requested was that we supply the organization or department that was making the grant evidence of ownership. The evidence of ownership that was supplied, we questioned whether or not it was necessary to have a survey. In fact, when the survey was done around the lake, it included all the property in question. What the town has done is they've entered into a settlement with Mount Moriah Church. It hadn't been finalized, but we basically agreed on everything. This was something that when you go back and, this has been part of a potential lawsuit. We haven't talked about it, and it hasn't been finalized. But I can go back and begin talking about the 1950s, early 1950s. And I can show you from the maps that were drawn, the deeds that were submitted, the easements were submitted, that it's understandable to me at least how the mistake occurred, and it began with the mapping department. The unique thing about this situation is that you have a church and you have a town. You've got two non-taxpaying entities. You've got a map that everyone agreed essentially that this is where the property line was. Now, when that came to our attention, there's a lot of different ways you can declare ownership of property, one of which is a deed, and there was an indenturement that was there. It had a meets and bounds that talked about what the ownership interest was. And I can understand when you turn to if someone's not an attorney and looking at this document, they might think, hey, this is a deed. And then they turn over and they see this map. And they line the map up. And they say, well, this is the property it's describing. And then they would draw it on the map, the tax map. I would submit that I think that's what happened. Now, you can have adverse possession, which is another way of owning property or acquiring property. So there's a lot of things that were going on. There would have been one contention that, hey, you don't own the property. We would have submitted that, yes, we do. We've exercised dominion and control over it for some 50 years, almost 60 years. When the question was asked, hey, do you want this property taken into the town? You said, no, we don't. Landis came out and they did the survey. So this would have been a lawsuit that would have gone on for a very long time. But the parties did, and I applaud the church. I heard that there were 100 people who voted. When it was explained to them, 97 voted to settle, because it was going to give them money that could help them do whatever they needed to do, which I understand in early stages was, I was being told, possibly help them with their parking lot. It gives Landis the land, and there's no longer a dispute over who actually owns that land. And so I would submit to you that it was the right thing to do from both sides. And when I had talked to different members of the church before they hired this last attorney, I would have never suspected they would have been able to have that sort of agreement. And from what I understand during the meeting, it was just, they said this was the right thing to do. The property was going to be utilized by the town to do something that they could actually use in their ministry. A question was asked about the naming rights. What this board decided was, well, there's a separation of church and state. We can't do that. Certainly, we would make that facility available and open to any church that wants to use it. And so we're in the process. It hasn't been finalized, but hopefully we'll be able to get it. One interesting point, there was a survey. There was a survey from, I think it was 1953 or 4. And it's in my office. Showed it to Brandon. We looked at it. The survey that they did, the meets and bounds lined up on 3/4 of that survey, usually within 5 feet. So there's lots of reasons as to why this mistake occurred. But the one thing that I'm proud of this board, and more proud of the church, is that they resolved it. They resolved it the way they should have. Thank you.
But I don't disagree that, the resolution wasn't for both parties. It's just that it's never been brought up at a meeting. It's another one of those kind
You
of a
can't.
hidden factor.
You can't. Anytime there's a potential lawsuit, that is an issue that can't be discussed in open forum. That's the kind of thing that you discuss in executive session, especially when you're trying to make a decision about what can happen.
But the town doesn't even need to be aware that they're being sued. So, I mean, there couldn't have been.
Nobody got sued.
Of a potential lawsuit.
Well, that's why it was in executive session.
My last thing is, at one time there was an ordinance, and they were pretty heavy on it for a short period of time on unkempt properties and keeping them good. And I wonder what's the status of that. Has anything been done on any properties in the last 6 months to a year?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
I'm not sure what the ordinance is. There was an ordinance that was passed, and for a short period of time at least, it was hot and heavy on unkempt properties, getting them cleaned up and taken care of. Has anything been done in the last 6 months to a year on any of that ordinance?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, we have a business right now that's within $53,000 of civil penalties that we're working on right now. It's not too far from
Could
here.
that be the mini mall?
No, ma'am.
That would look terrible.
I can't talk which one it is, but there's also, I've sent out multiple letters this past week, as well as within the last 6 months. We've done abatements on several properties and have liens on those properties that we've done abatements on.
Is one of them the house on Ryder by chance? Or not Ryder, Cannon?
I can't get into it.
Because that was mentioned at a meeting once before that it's but that's been a long time.
There is a time process. However, once they come into compliance within that time, then there's nothing that we as the town can do. But whenever they are not in compliance any longer, then we'll send out another letter, and they have a certain amount of days to come into compliance. And if they don't, then we'll do an abatement on the property. In return, once we do the abatement on the property owner will have a lien on that property.
Thank you.
Sometimes these property owners even live out of state. You have a hard time even contacting them to make them do anything.
That is correct.
It gets drawn out for years.
That is correct.
It's not an easy process. It ain't no letter goes out, will burn your house down tomorrow if you don't mow your yard. They don't happen that way.
That's correct. There's several that live out of state that keep getting returned because I can't find them.
That goes back to what I was talking about, the tens of thousands of papers and documents has to go through this town hall. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
That's correct.
Everybody's got a right.
Not there.
Yes, sir.
I'm long-winded, so I'm going to try my best to fit this in 3 minutes. Seth Moore, 325 Deborah Drive. Again, I would like to state that everything that I said up there was nothing against the character of the person, Roger Hosey, or him being town manager. Currently, it was just the process that was taken by the board. And I think that he will do a great job where he's at, and given the right board in the fall, I believe that they can work together and do a lot of great things for this town. Nothing against him, it was against what the process was and the decisions that were made, and with the door roll. That being said, I'd like to talk about this investigation. I didn't sit on information for 3 months, 2 years, whatever, and make an apology of I could have saved $100,000 for this town. What I did was, Meredith Bear Smith, who's currently running for mayor, gave me information on February 1st about some payments that were being made to a certain business in the area. I called that weekend, was not able to get in touch with anyone. February 4th, I finally got on the phone with him, the general manager of this establishment, and I was able to determine within 4 phone calls that there was improper use of town funds and that money was being paid to personal accounts at this business. That night, that was February 4th when we had a town meeting. February 4th, then I'm speaking all day long with Brandon and Kenny, and later that evening after the meeting, Hosey, and we started the preliminary processes of what I had found with my information. And if they were able to determine that same information the next day, speaking with the owner of this business, then they would be able to initiate a preliminary investigation. Their findings ended up leading to more, and they were able to determined that they needed to do more, and that's when the rest of the board was brought in, so that Mike, as mayor, could sign a paper to take it to Brandy Cook, the district attorney. She was able to determine that it needed to be escalated to the State Bureau of Investigations for the state of North Carolina. This information that I got, Mike called me on February 6th, the Wednesday, and was like, Seth, because you're a board member, you ought to know this. I feel like you have a right to know this, that we've got a situation with an investigation in the town. And I'm like, oh, are you really trying to tell me about the investigation that I started here in this town? Acting like he had done it all. He did nothing. He authorized the investigation to take it to Brandy Cook after I got the information to open up Pandora's box from Meredith. And so Meredith, I want to thank you for giving me that information and allowing us to get this out of the situation that we're in. I would also like to thank Brandon, Kenny, and Hosey for everything that they did in that investigation. And back to what I said earlier about the incompetency of our mayor. The 4 years that I've been on this board, I have sat here, Reed, will you take number 5? Reed, will you take number 6? Hey, Reed, how about number 7? 8, 9. You haven't ran a single meeting since you've been mayor in the 4 years that I've been here. It was all Reed Lynn. He had the control. And I would like to remind everyone that he was mayor, Mike Mahaley was mayor, when Reed Lynn was hired as town manager. And there were not checks and balances put in place. There was no accountability with that board. And his lack of what he did as mayor then, we chose not to do a process to look for applicants, to not allow people in multiple leadership positions and so forth. That's all I have to say.
You want to, I got something to say. Yeah. Number one, the first 4 years that I was mayor when Reed was hired, there wasn't a nickel stove. It started in 2010. So get your facts right.
Yeah, I said that you didn't put any checks and balances in place to keep that from happening.
I know what happened. I know what happened on this thing. We got you credit. That's what you wanted.
I don't want any credit.
Yes, you did.
I'm not running for election.
On the date, Mr. Mayor, I would just caution you. Yeah, we just got one more.
Okay, let's get them up here.
This Joy Drive.
Joy Drive for 9 North Side Street. Since it seems like transparency has been brought up a good bit, I just wanted to kind of go over what it means. What does it mean to lack transparency? One business dictionary defines transparency as a lack of hidden agendas or conditions accompanied by the availability of the full information required for collaboration, cooperation, and collective decision-making. Well, perhaps the most important aspect of transparency is that it helps to build interpersonal trust, something which is absolutely essential for getting people to share and collaborate with each other. Organizations don't need to tear down silos, they just need to make them more transparent. I feel like this is transparent as red mud, and you know it, you know it. Seth, I appreciate you, and I agree with everything you just said, 110%. Tony, you've said 10 times, I mean hundreds of times, one thing and then turned around and said something else. You've done it to me. You did it too, Mike. I don't trust anything anymore, simply because, okay, imagine this. If all the words, this started a long time ago, this started, years back. You were in there, and you were mayor a long time ago. So, I mean, you don't know if it was stolen or anything was stolen or not.
We got a good idea. We got the figures. Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Well,
because I feel like you don't really.
You can believe what you want, young
And
lady.
I do.
You do, that's right.
And I do. But believe me, there are a lot more people that see through things, that are transparent, truly transparent. We know. We've watched it, and people have been trying to tell you, people have mentioned this, complained about this. All of this money, where did this money go? Where did this money go? We knew that something was going on. Why didn't you?
We did.
Oh, really? Didn't you? It took you this long to do anything?
There's no way you'll ever know what we knew, so there's
I
no
don't really think
there's
that
no
you
need,
either.
there's no need me talking about it. That's it.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, we know that we're not going to get the truth anyway. And Hosey, I don't have a problem with, I think that you make a good, it's a job. My problem was how it happened. That's my problem, is the lack of transparency. It just happened to be the weekend that Seth was gone. That to me is an issue. But I have a little bit of an issue with the fact that there are layered jobs. It's hard for me to really get an idea of how you can really focus clearly on any of the one jobs, any one particular job. Plus go to school, plus have a life. There's just a lot to do. So, I mean, I hope you, wish you well. I mean, I want you to do a good job. So, that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just address that real briefly. The initial discussion was that I had 4 jobs, and I have backed out of the IT role. So if there's a small thing, yeah, I'll fix it, but I'll also take out the trash can if it's full. It doesn't mean I'm the garbage man. So any major projects are going to be contracted out. With Ms. Seifert here now, I thank the good Lord I'm no longer the finance officer. That's not a role that I ever sought out, wanted, enjoyed, or planned on continuing. As far as the role in the police department, I think a lot of people have a misconception about what powers and authorities the police chief has that every other police officer doesn't. I think there would be very few people who would say, we have a problem with you maintaining your status as a reserve officer while concurrently being the city manager, right? I think the people's issue is that there's this power, this vested power in the chief of police. Well, the city manager has the authority to override pretty much any decision that the chief of police or any other department head makes. So it's almost kind of a false assumption if you think about that a combination position is set out or has any intent or any effect of gathering power and trying to culminate power into some type of ultra dictator, minister dictator position or something. The only powers really that the chief has that the newest rookie officer doesn't have deal with setting policy, deal with budget issues, deal with personnel issues, deal with things that purely are going to be in the purview of the town manager regardless. So when I was approached about becoming the town manager, one of my preconditions was I'm not going to give up the police department. And I meant that. I left a very lucrative career in IT to go be a police officer, and that's something that I felt very dearly about, and that's not something that I was willing to be separated from totally. I would have been quite content at the police department. That being said, I did a lot of thought, a lot of prayer, talked to several people, and I felt that it was something that I was compelled to do, not because it was something that I would enjoy. I knew when I agreed to accept it that I was coming into a position where there was a lot of people that had just outrage at the situation, and it was righteous outrage. Everybody here has a right to be extremely upset with what happened. I guarantee you nobody here is more upset than I am. And I've heard people say, well, it's not your town, you don't live here. Well, I bought a house in China Grove when I was a police officer in China Grove, and I had my mother-in-law not bought a house next door to me, I would have already sold it and bought a house here. I spend all my waking hours just about here. All my friends are here. This is my life. Landis is my town. I have fought and bled and cried and almost died on several occasions for this town. Nobody loves this town more than I do. So I'm not in this position because it was something that I sought. I'm in this position because it was something that I was approached to do and that I felt my love for this town called on me and demanded me to do. The day-to-day duties and responsibilities in the police department, I'm not going to be out here stopping a bunch of cars and shaking a bunch of doorknobs and that type of thing. By me serving in these dual roles, what it's going to do is it's going to save a considerable amount of money because there's not going to be another chief. We're small enough where we don't really need a full-time dedicated chief. We can get away with having a lot of those the day-to-day authorities delegated to lower-ranking, mid-level supervisors who are actually out here beating the streets. So it saves the town money. It puts more boots on the ground as opposed to in the office. And it allows me to continue to serve the town in the ways that I am best able to. If I were to totally have recused myself and said, I'm going to surrender my certification as a law enforcement officer totally to avoid controversy, I'm sure there would have been some other controversy regardless. But had I even done that, it doesn't change the fact that I've spent years, I'm in my 13th year with employment with the town, and the whole time basically with the police department until February when I dedicated my time here. I still have a lot of institutional knowledge here, so the guys are still going to be coming to me for information. The guys are still going to be coming to me for guidance. So even if I cast off that title, it wouldn't have really changed a lot of things. So I've tried to think outside the box on a lot of things on the budget. I think everybody's pleased that where we're going with the budget. I think that the town's going in the right direction. I understand that everybody is upset. I truly do. But whether you agree with how I was appointed or whether you don't, and I understand a lot of you don't, know that I was sought out. It was not my desire to serve in this position, but as long as I have the distinct honor and privilege to serve in the position, I'm going to do my very best to be fair to everyone here, to everybody in the town, that I'm going to treat the employees fairly, and that I'm going to treat the board members and the citizens with the respect that they deserve. So if you're upset with how I got appointed, I can't really comment on that. It wouldn't be my place. It's a political appointment. It's different from every other position in the town. Every other position in the town manager has the authority to hire and fire. They're classified positions. The city manager or the town manager is a political appointment. I serve at the pleasure of the board. Any board that comes can turn around and replace me. So, is it different because it wasn't posted? Yes, it was. That wasn't my decision to make. My decision was I was called, and do I accept it or do I not? And out of the love I have for this town, I chose to accept it. I won't belabor the point further than that. I would just ask for your support and a chance to earn your trust if I haven't already. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion. Who made the motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
To adjourn. Thank you very much, folks.
Oh, I'm good. Thank you.